Yo, what's going on, y'all? It's Cone, and the Anthony Davis Mavericks era is already off to a very, very weird start. Of course, I mean, it was going to be a weird start regardless when he was traded from the Lakers to the Mavericks for Luka Doncic. It's the blockbuster deal that everybody can't stop talking about. I mean, I'm making another video that kind of references that deal. It is one of the most shocking trades in NBA history, and because of that, by giving up a guy in Luka Doncic, who the fan base adored, they loved, he was the guy for the Dallas Mavericks, was supposed to be for the next generation of Dallas basketball fans. Like, there were protests, a lot of them outside the arena before Anthony Davis's debut game, but because of all the attachment to Luka, expectations from the first moment that AD played in a Mavs uniform were going to be sky high, and he debuted and he met a lot of those expectations. In fact, he exceeded most of them. He had one of the best Mavericks debuts, arguably the best of all time. The debut came at home against the Houston Rockets, who came into this one on a 5-game losing streak. I don't know if you've noticed, but they've kind of been spiraling recently. They've been dealing with some injuries like Fred VanVleet, and of course, Jabari Smith Jr. has been out for a while with that fractured hand. The defense has taken a big step back recently. The offense is still clunky. It's not the team that we've seen for a majority of the season, but with that losing streak going on, they were coming into this one desperate to snap it. They still are a really good team, and the Mavericks were going to have to make a statement. They were going to have to get into this game and fire on all cylinders from the get-go to go ahead and try and push this one out of reach. And Anthony Davis did his part. He had an insane first quarter, 14 points, 8 rebounds, 3 assists on 6 of 8 shooting, completely stonewalling anything that the Rockets tried to do, especially Alperen Sengun. I mean, Sengun is an all-star. He's been really good this season. He is the focal point of most things that the Rockets do offensively, and he couldn't get anything going. It looked like, a varsity basketball player playing up against a third grader sometimes with some of the post-ups, just how insanely difficult AD was to move. And later in the game, Sengun got the better of him a couple of times, but not in this first quarter. This was like the vision for the Mavericks if they want to be competitive, if they want to be a championship contender with Anthony Davis in town. It starts with the stifling defense. The double bigs of AD and Daniel Gafford completely shut off everything. They were blocking shots. They were deterring guys away from the rim. There were so many moments where the Rockets were just trying to get off a heave at the end of a shot clock because nothing else was working. They kept trying to penetrate the paint over and over and just couldn't get any decent looks. And it ended up in this game with the Mavericks setting a franchise record of 18 blocks, and 6 of those came courtesy of Daniel Gafford, who played really well alongside Anthony Davis. At one point, AD threw a lob to Daniel Gafford. That was a cool double big connection. This is the team that's just going to try and overwhelm opponents with that defense, with that size. There's not a lot of squads that can match up with them. They were getting a lot of rebounds. They were killing them on the glass. It was picture perfect. If you're a Mavericks fan looking for some optimism, some hope following the Luka trade, you're distraught. This should have given you at least some. And it was also big that Anthony Davis was hitting his shots. He's not been a very efficient jump shooter over the last few years of his career, and out there he was knocking down mid-range jumper after mid-range jumper, had an and one, hit a 3 on the game as a whole. He hit 2 threes, went 2 of 2 from the outside. You need that from AD. You're going to need him to be able to be this number one option, whether it's him or Kyrie. One of them's got to really step up, because I've said this, I'm not a believer in AD or Kyrie as your number one option going into a title hopeful run in the year 2025. I just don't think that's something that can happen. So to prove me wrong, one of them needs to elevate, and Anthony Davis clearly was locked in this one. At one point, he was screaming, I'm here, I'm here. And he finished this game with 26 points, 16 rebounds, 7 assists, and 3 blocks on 10 of 18 shooting. Like I said, 2 from 3. Just everything went his way. Stifling defense, knocking down the jumpers, being a force unstoppable on the interior, blocking shots. This is like exactly what you want to see. If you're Nico Harrison, if you're the Mavs front office, if you're a fan of the team, if you want to be hopeful about the Mavericks, you needed this type of performance from Anthony Davis. The only thing that was a little bit worrying was that in the second half, they really started to slow down quite a bit when the Rockets went bigger. They started the second half with both Alperen Sengun and Steven Adams out there. And at first I'm like, what are we doing? This is going to be the clunkiest thing of all time. But they were able to slow down the Mavericks a good bit, to the point where I think they brought it back from a massive deficit to like 1. I don't think they ever took the lead in that second half, but they were right there knocking on the doorstep. And there was this big stretch where it's like, okay, here is kind of the problem. with this Mavericks team is that the offense is going to be hard to come by against teams that have some size, against teams that can really body up physically, that are great defensively. They're going to go through some big lulls, and their hope has to be that the defense can keep them in the game for long enough, slow down the other team while they're struggling until the offense comes back online. And at the end of this game, like Najee Marshall made some big plays, Kyrie did, and Max Christie. Defense of Daniel Gafford continued. He had 3 blocks in the fourth quarter. They did enough to go ahead and steal this one and get the win. I'm very excited as well to see what this team looks like with Derek Lively, because I feel like his athleticism and even more size on that front could help them out against this double big look. But this is something to worry about a little bit, especially like when your top competition is Oklahoma City, who has the ability to run a double big of Chet Holmgren and Isaiah Hartenstein. So yeah, that's something to note. But overall, for a majority of this game, it was exactly what you want to see, except for the thing that happened in the third quarter, where Anthony Davis suddenly grabs at like his groin ab type of region. It was a non-contact injury. He walks off the court, is doubtful to return, and ultimately is ruled out. AD did not play down the home stretch of this game because of an injury. And after the game, he was asked in his locker, how do you feel about this? Do you think this is going to be a problem? And he said no. He said he doesn't think this is a major injury of any kind. But we just found out yesterday on Super Bowl Sunday, they dropped this news during the Super Bowl, clearly trying to bury it a little bit, that Anthony Davis is expected to miss at least a few weeks, if not up to a month, with the injury that he suffered in that game. And this is one of the big concerns with Anthony Davis. It's been a big concern throughout his entire career, where AD is an amazing player. He's consistently been top 10 for a long time now. Game-breaking defender. When the offense is going, he's one of the most unstoppable two-way players that I've ever seen. But it's hard for him to stay on the court. And over the last couple of years, he's done a good job of staying healthy. It's been one of the healthier stretches of Anthony Davis's career, but you had to think at some point he was in for some regression to the mean with his health. He wasn't going to just remain as a 70-plus game player for the rest of his career. He was going to miss some time. Something substantial was going to happen. And it did. Now, luckily enough for the Mavericks, it happened at maybe the best time possible with the All-Star break right around the corner. They only have 2 games left before the break, and then they're going to go into the home stretch of the season. So that in and of itself knocks off a week from Anthony Davis, them having to lose games potentially with him out. But even still, you're in a heated race at the bottom of the Western Conference right now. At the moment, they're the 8th seed. They're 28-25. They're 1.5 games back of the Clippers at the 7th spot, but they're also only 1.5 games ahead of the 9-seeded Kings, of the 10-seeded Suns, of the 11-seeded Golden State Warriors, who just had Jimmy Butler, who had an amazing debut in his own right. It's scary if you're a Mavericks fan, because not only that, but the schedule, if you look at it in the time that Anthony Davis is expected to be out, looks pretty intimidating. They tonight play against the Sacramento Kings. You've got the Golden State Warriors going into the All-Star break. Actually, scratch that. They have 3 games to go ahead and wrap up this pre-All-Star break period, because they then play the Miami Heat on the second half of a back-to-back. Coming out of the All-Star break, they have the Pelicans, but then it's the Warriors. That's 2 games against the Warriors and 1 against the Kings. 2 teams who are trying to catch you without Anthony Davis. You also play the Lakers, and I know Luka's going to try to drop 100 on February 25th. Then it's the Hornets, but then it's the Bucks, the Kings, the Bucks, the Grizzlies, and the Suns. And that would take you to about a month since the injury happened. I wouldn't be surprised if they're cautious, and the next 3 games after that are the Spurs twice and the Rockets. They have a pretty brutal schedule going into this stretch where they could be completely without Anthony Davis, and you don't want to rush him back because you need him at all costs if you want to make any run in the playoffs. If you want to win in the play-in tournament, where it seems like they're going to be, there's a real chance that AD comes back and they were the 11 seed, and now they're going to have ground to make up. They're still trying to find the chemistry with this thing. There are some concerns that were shown in that first game. It's just such a brutal follow-up to what was such an amazing moment, an amazing debut for Anthony Davis. And this really is the AD experience. All in about the span of a few days. This is what you're going to get with AD as one of the faces of your franchise. And the irony here is that they traded Luka Doncic because they're worried about his conditioning. They're worried about his weight, the injuries that he's dealt with, that he's not doing enough to avoid those injuries. That's their concern, and they traded him, who's 25 years old, and for a majority of his career, he's never been a 70 consistent game player, but he's always been healthy for the playoffs, and he's always been healthy when you need him most. They traded him at a much younger age with much lower injury concern for AD, who is the guy that's known for getting hurt. And again, he's been really healthy as of late, But this, like, they had to have expected this at some moment, right? There's no way that they're blindsided by this. I mean, probably blindsided that it happened literally the first time that he played, but it always felt like there was going to be some substantial AD injury throughout the course of the season that was going to derail them for a little bit. It was just a question of how bad would it be and when would it occur? Again, it's probably the best possible time with the All-Star break right around the corner, but no time was going to be good when you're in this highly contested Western Conference playoff play-in picture. This is bad, and it's even worse because they desperately need to compete this season. If you're the Mavericks front office, you've got to show your fan base something that this trade was worth it. Immediately, everybody thought it was the worst trade ever, and then AD debuted, and people were like, okay, maybe I see the vision a little bit, but I still don't feel great, and now he's immediately out for a month. Fans are going to start rioting at this rate, not to mention Kyrie's a free agent, or he can be if he declines his player option. I expect him to after this season, and if they end up missing the playoffs entirely, there's a world where they're the 11th seed, and they don't even make it into the play-in tournament. Does Kyrie consider leaving? Does Kyrie look at this situation, the fact that AD got hurt and it ultimately cost him a chance at even a playoff run? Does he consider leaving, like walking to somewhere else in this offseason? And maybe, I mean, Kyrie's not shown any indication that he's going to leave Dallas, but at the same time, like, he didn't show many indications he was going to leave like a Boston when he left them. Kyrie's always been a bit of a confusing guy when it comes to free agency and where he's going to play next, so that's quite concerning. Plus, Anthony Davis, I mean, right now he's 32 years old. He's going to be 33 for next season. You're running out of time for him playing at this top 10 player level. If you miss out on this season of him, it's going to start to get even scarier as he gets into his mid-30s, and then those injuries could only ramp up more. This was like their chance. I mean, this season, it's like, I personally never thought they were going to be contenders with Anthony Davis. I thought with Luka, they had a real shot, but once they trade him, it was over. But if they want to show their fans that maybe there is a chance, it was this season, and I think this injury could completely derail that. Maybe Kyrie and the other guys are enough to hold on. Also, PG Washington got hurt during that game as well, so that's another thing that's concerning. He is questionable to play tonight against the Kings, so maybe it's not a big deal. It was just like a little ankle tweak, but like those injuries start to stack up. You really can't afford to have guys miss basically any games at this point. You need all hands on deck. You've got to perform, and I'm worried that it's just not going to be enough when it comes to this Western Conference. So yeah, the Anthony Davis experience is off to kind of an insane start. I guess you could say, like, again, it is like the whole Anthony Davis situation in just a few days. Like, this is kind of what he's always been as a player. It's crazy that it happened this quick though. But yeah, those are my thoughts on the beginning of this AD era in Dallas. We're going to get a little bit more to this whole situation tonight when Luka debuts for the Los Angeles Lakers. There probably will be a video tomorrow breaking down how that debut went, so make sure to tune in for that. Leave a like, subscribe, of course, hit the notification bell so you don't miss that video and future ones. Let me know down below how you felt about Anthony Davis's debut. If you're a Mavs fan with that and the injury in mind, how are you feeling at the moment? I appreciate you watching. I'll see y'all later. Real one, say it back.